What's going on, everyone? It's Mitch from RespectMyRegion.com coming back with another episode of the North American Weed Tour podcast, looking at the best in legal cannabis across the map. Today, joined by special guest Lauren Accardi of Naturepay. How you doing today, Lauren?
Hi, feeling good. Thanks so much for having me. How's
Yeah,
everyone out there?
excited to have you on here. I know you're in Las Vegas right now, where I will be joining you and the rest of the Naturepay team this weekend at MJ BizCon, or what I like to call Weed Week, because it's turned into a whole week-long fiasco these days. And then we also both a part of the Hush House after party on Thursday. So we'll all get to parlay in person, man. How did you just get to Vegas today, or how long you been out there?
We did. We just arrived this morning. We took a very early flight in to kind of be able to, prepare for our guests that were coming. We decided to opt for an Airbnb this time for the convention. So, just kind of had some really nice time to prepare for our house. So we'll be entertaining the week and then, of course, co-sponsoring the event with Hush House later in the week. So really looking forward to seeing everyone.
You got that advantage of being able to get there early, being on the other side of the map, that central time, man. You can leave a couple hours before we quite wake up out here.
Yeah. We got a couple of showers, and the airport was like no traffic, which was great. We kind of just breezed right through security, which was that's always a task in and of itself when you're traveling. So yeah, coming early sometimes has its perks, even though you got to wake up early in the morning.
Absolutely. And so before we get too deep, I kick off every episode with our guest origin story with the plant being cannabis here. So whether that's personal, professional, a little bit of both, whatever you choose to be, vulnerable and sharing. Just curious, kind of your origin story, Lauren, with the cannabis plant.
Yeah, so for me personally, I had a lifestyle change about a decade ago where I decided to do more of a holistic approach to health and alternative healings. So took a more plant-based approach to my lifestyle. With that, I just started using more cannabis for healing purposes. So that's kind of been a progressive thing over the last decade. And then recently, about 2019, I got introduced to the Naturepay executive vice president Justin Cummings and kind of joined the team. And so professionally, that's been my experience, in addition to the personal, that kind of came prior to that. So it's really cool to be working in the space now. As a medical user here in Illinois, I do live in Illinois, and then, professionally working in it as well.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the unique thing about cannabis is the industry is really just being built, right in front of us. And what, 10 years ago, whether you were passionate about the plant, involved with commerce of the plant, just a consumer, there was no dream job. There were no jobs in general in cannabis, right? And now the industry is exploding. We just obviously saw 2 states go, vote pro recreational cannabis on the midterm ballots here in Maryland and Missouri. I always say the conversation for legal cannabis continues to get bigger as more states come to that conversation and elevate from medical to the adult use markets as well. And alongside that, right, there's ancillary businesses. It's not just cultivating the plant. It's not just sales of the plant. There are many ancillary businesses that are involved with the process of cultivating this plant, manufacturing the products that come from it, and then obviously the commerce of the transportation and the commerce of that at a retail and delivery storefront. And so at Naturepay, you guys, dabble in the financial aspects of this, which is obviously important for any business. Cash flow is the gasoline for the engine, but it's also a highly regulated industry who has been no stranger to plenty of red tape and obstacles when it comes to just moving money around on this thing that is legal state by state and federally illegal. It creates all sorts of fun complications. I use fun very sarcastically as a verb there. What is the root of Naturepay? So I know you guys work on banking, and then there's also the payment processing side. Are those the two facets? You guys have more than that? And then when NaturePay started, so this is a two-pronged question actually. When NaturePay started, was it more focused on one side or the other?
Thank you. So NaturePay, founded by Jim Lang in 2015. He's the president and founder, and then Justin Cummings, the vice president, his partner. They, come from merchant services world. So them combined come from the traditional merchant services world. Combined have over 30 years experience. And then joining, the cannabis space in 2015 as merchant services and payment processing. They've seen a lot of things change, as of course this world does. And so now, they're really focused on compliance and convenience for our merchants, and which is specifically cannabis, dispensaries and delivery nationwide. So, we're working in all legal states nationwide. And so, banking, we have a sponsor bank and a processor that's party to all of our transactions. So we do work directly with a sponsor bank. And so that's kind of a key component in what makes us compliant through and through.
And what was it like? Like, are you guys working with one main primary like sponsor bank? Is that what you said, to help all the transactions to make sure it's compliant and ran through kind of a stable partner?
Right. It's important, because they have to follow, the state, and it has to be, legitimately, and fully transparent when you're doing cannabis transactions, right? Because it's a plant touching business. Mm-hmm. So, it's important that, they follow the state and local guidelines to comply with FinCEN, the AML, the BSA. These things are important, and, crossing all of your T's and dotting your I's. This is how you can keep in line with compliance and making it the correct way to do, payment processing and banking moving forward. We really want to try to create like a future forward payment processing system, working with a top-notch integration right now with a top-notch POS, and, future forward tech is really where it's going.
Absolutely. And, when it comes to, payment processing in the cannabis space, right? Like, this is traditionally they say it's an all cash business, but there obviously are solutions to go, use plastic and use not stray away from cash and have it more of a traditional consumer experience at retail. What is your guys's, the PIN debit system? What does that look like for you guys? Is it just run very similar or straightforward to your average system? Is there a workaround in that kind of is, kind of unique because of the cannabis aspect, or what's that look like on your guys' end?
Thank you. So PIN debit it's a true PIN debit solution, meaning that when the customer actually puts their chip into the reader, they have to enter their PIN number, and the merchant then has the ability to swipe the transaction directly to the penny. So there is no workaround in the sense that there's a roundup or a cashback, because it's an actual transaction, running on the debit rails versus a transaction run on a cashless ATM. So we are working on a true PIN debit solution. And so the real difference here is compliance, right? Because it's compliant. We're swiping right to the penny. We're following all of the right ways to do things. And then second, it's also about convenience, right? So the customer wants to be able to shop for cannabis the same way that they shop for groceries or going anywhere. And we're so used to using our debit cards, we want to be able to use it normally just like we would anywhere else. So when there's a weird kind of workaround or having to do something extra, 3 different steps, the consumer gets a little apprehensive, right? And so to be able to bring normalcy to, cannabis shopping experience is awesome. I'm a shopper, I'm a consumer, so I still go out to the dispensaries, and I have a medical card in Illinois, and a lot of times they still have to do the roundup and the change back for me because I didn't bring cash, or I don't want to use the ATM, or whatever the case is. So future forward payments, like I said, is going to give the ability to swipe right to the penny. And I think that's, a really great place to be right now.
And my understanding with like, the not right to the penny and the compliance factor, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is like it's doing that to basically make the PIN debit, a lot of those solutions, not to shit on anyone's solution, but it's making that solution look more like an ATM transaction, and that's kind of how they're making things go around compliance. And so with you guys, like, what is it through kind of the system that you guys have set up through the bank, or if you can kind of just break down what makes it compliant to be able to run to the penny, whereas obviously other solutions are not running at that route.
Sure. So, the merchant does have to go through a full underwriting process, and it's pretty thick. It's not just, hey, let's sign up for, a transaction machine here, or hey, let's get some, ATMs in here. It's not the simplest application. It does go through a very rigorous underwriting process. You also have to be banking with a, compliant banking institution. So, there's a couple of things that, have to happen in order for you to actually, comply with the rules, in order to get an actual merchant identification number, so we underwrite so that the merchant is authorized amid. This is, an important step in compliance, right? So if you are out there and you're at a dispensary and they're doing the roundup and the change back, that merchant was not actually underwritten as a plant touch business. So they were never authorized amid. And so that's also the difference too, right? We're making sure that our merchants are completely compliant through the application process, and we have to follow all these rules too. So,
and that's what the thing with when it comes to compliance, right? Like a lot of people in this industry, I mean, license holders know when it comes to compliance, if you're the license holder, a lot of that liability falls back on you. So it's important to make sure those T's are crossed and those I's are dotted on the compliance factor, because it's likely not. I mean, maybe it would be the payment processor getting slapped with some fines or whatever, but also that license holder is going to have to deal with that if things are not set up correct. And for you guys, right, like being based in Chicago, I know we'd spoken about this on the phone a little bit, but being based in Chicago, we call it the land of the MSO, right? Like a lot of the big businesses are headquartered there. A lot of big cannabis, if you will, is kind of that's the birthplace of it, if you will. What is your guys' current client roster looking like, versus is it large scale MSOs? Is it kind of smaller in-state chains? Is it single store mom and pops? Is it a mix of kind of all three? What does that look like for you guys?
Sure. So, Naturepay has been in the market since 2015. So they do have a very blended portfolio, I would say, ranging from one-offs, smaller mom and pops to, a couple, maybe a smaller chain and a larger MSOs. So we are working with some of the bigger brands currently. So that's very exciting, and getting into some of the markets that, have been tough to get into. And then locally here at home, we're doing our best to really hit the newer licensees that are kind of coming up and getting into this new fresh market. And so we're just doing our best to try to meet some of these new faces, to be supportive with, some of these new businesses that are going to come up. And yeah, always looking to, brush shoulders and have conversations with some of these larger MSOs, because let's face it, at the end of the day, future forward payments is obviously going to be swiping to the penny. So we're going to hopefully be talking one day, right? So we'd love to talk sooner, rather than later. Hint, hint. But yeah, Illinois is a beast. So doing our best.
Absolutely. It's a different market out there. Someone that came from the West Coast. I live in Washington, second state to have recreational cannabis. To then, I just was in Chicago for the first time checking out the scene a couple weeks ago, and it's just a different world, man. Seeing where we came from and where some of these other markets are taking it, and even just looking at that, like Washington there's no MSOs out here, or none of the big MSOs are out here. It's a lot of small market mom and pop, but even the chains, even like the biggest retail chains in Washington, are kind of still in-state chains. And there's those unique obstacles to any business of upgrading their systems, right? Whether it's small, like low on bandwidth, financial commitments, or you get up to the bigger multi-state operators, then it's a whole regulatory mess of how do we implement something that's going to be compliant across everything. So what are some of those? I'll break into that in a second, but one of the questions I have is what for you guys, like working with you guys, what's usually kind of that lead time and bandwidth back on an account, whether it's a retail or dispensary? How hands-on, or what's the time commitment that they have to put in to get up and running, and what's that lead time go from when they first inquire with you guys to when they can start accepting payments?
So to be honest with you, it varies, and it really depends on probably the ability for the person who's manning it to round everything up and get it sent over to us in a full package. So usually, from the time we do the demo, I have literally seen it where we've done a phone call on a demo. We closed it on the first call, and we got the package sent to us later that night. So we were boarding it the very next day, and with like maybe one back and forth before we were able to send it to underwriting, and then we had it back and was done in 7 days. And then by the time the whole thing went out and terminals were there, I think it was like 12 days. That's like the fastest I've ever seen it done. And that's a very unique situation, right? But I've also seen it where, it takes a little bit longer because, that manager at the store has to gather a lot of documents, right? Because we go through a very full underwriting process. So there's typically, 20 plus pages attached to a full, application package with us. And then, sometimes that could take a couple of days if she has to get in touch with several owners. So, that could take a week, that could take 2 weeks. I've seen people it takes a month, and it's because they're coordinating between 3 different people that are all owners of that space. So I've seen it go out, 4 to 6 weeks, and I've seen the sales process go out 6 months too. So it really varies on the need of that location, and then also how quickly they're able to have those conversations internally with the people who are really making the decisions, the upper level management, executives, and then ownership.
Yeah. And that's something, the realm that I work in outside of content creation or podcast media is marketing agency. And that's one of the slowest things for us onboarding new clients is like, how can we get all the information, all the stakeholders together? And I don't know if that's just cannabis. It might be small businesses in general, getting all that information together, all the decision makers on the same page in a timely manner. It's really up to them. For those multi-state operating clients, people that are operating in different states that have obviously different regulations and potentially different, processes that are due to those regulations, does that kind of create a longer lead time for you guys? Or since you guys are more just at the payment side, it's a little bit more streamlined and that aspect doesn't necessarily vary state to state as much?
Yes and no. I mean, I would think that it really doesn't. You know, it really, like I said, it yes and no. It depends. If they have banking already, it won't really matter. We'll just kind of go through the process, right? But some people actually need banking, so then we need to help them, you know, get in touch with a compliant banking institution, and then, you know, that process can take a little bit of time. So it can vary state to state, and it really just depends on sometimes availability for compliant banking.
And what are some of the biggest issues you guys have seen when someone wants to onboard with you guys and you take a look at their current banking infrastructure? What are some problems that seem to reoccur? Some big problems out there that people are making in the cannabis space within the banking realm?
Probably I don't think they realize that there are a lot of compliant cannabis banks out there. And so I think they just end up at, I hate to say it, but a traditional bank.
Mm-hmm.
And they're, you know, they're paying maybe exorbitant fees, or they can't do one thing or the other, or, you know, they've got to maybe do 1, 2, or 3 different steps before they're able to actually do what they want to do. They have to do workarounds, you know. I mean, it really, yeah, you really just need to get on a compliant, you know, cannabis banking trail, so that you can just, you know, stay compliant through and through from beginning to end.
Are you still seeing people bank with traditional banks and they're not being 100% honest with the bank, what their business is?
I mean, it's definitely happening. Yeah, I mean, I think the banks know, but
Sure.
I don't know. You know, that's hard to say. Yeah. I think, well, and I also only have, you know, like 3 years experience working and talking with the banks. So I think probably yes, you know, yes.
Yeah. I've heard about it. I'm not a plant touching business myself, but I work with plant touching businesses. And so there's certain things I do that I know my friends that touch plants don't do, but I know we could be held liable for. And I've just heard those
I mean,
stories.
for the most part, I think most people are trying to do things the right way, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it's still getting there. You know, there's a whole lot of things that still, you know, need to happen. And I think right now, taking the steps to get there is really something we can be thankful for and happy about. So to see the progress happening is really, you know, just a great step forward.
And then for you guys, is there an ideal like kind of client fit that fits your guys' services, or because it's obviously the banking side, payment processing, there's kind of anyone in the space?
Well, I mean, our bread and butter is cannabis dispensaries and delivery, right? So we want to be able to talk to the business owners, the people who actually, you know, have, you know, put their blood, sweat, and tears in opening up their shop. That's who we want to talk to. And it is, a lot of times it is, you know, a one-off and a mom and pop and maybe a couple, 2, 3, and they're local and they're small, and that's who we want to help. Honestly, it's that, and of course we want to work with the big MSOs, but you know, there's a huge market in kind of like that middle ground, and they need compliant payment processing as well. So that's where we call. You know, I call all over the nation on different days and different times of the day just to kind of mix things up, and I really do like, you know, calling and just going directly to, you know, trying to get the owner on the phone, because sometimes you only got 30 seconds to tell them, like, hey, this is what's going on right now. We just want to try to educate, you know, upper level management and ownership that this is what compliance looks like. Let me just send you some information, you know. It's as simple as that, really, because like I said, things are changing. So it's about educating the change out, you know, to everybody.
And then with that too, you know, obviously respect my region. We take a view at things region based. You know, we always say local, but local could be anywhere. We just look at things from a geolocal perspective. So just out of curiosity, Do you feel like there's any region or market that is more receptive or less receptive to talking about payment processing and banking? Like, are certain areas more thirsty for this information, or are certain areas a little bit more like, nah, we've already got this stuff figured out?
It's a mixed bag. I would say, California is really hot right now. So they're pretty receptive currently, but I would say also the coasts actually are pretty receptive right now, because I think there's a lot of big things happening along. There's always big things happening on the coast, but that kind of seems to be where I've seen and heard the most positive feedback, if you will. Though people are talking, in and around the country, and so that's great too, because at least we're getting feedback, right? And they're willing to talk about it, even if they're not quite ready to make the change.
Mm-hmm. And then for making that change, do you feel like the reasons are like businesses are trying to continue to scale, like whether they're scaling and want to scale further, unhappy with where they're at and they're looking to add, payment processing scale, or you feel like they feel the pressure from competition of like competitors offering services that they're not happening? Do you feel like it can be, obviously, again, I know it varies, like the reasoning or the lead source, right? But just kind of curious what some of those main pain points you feel like people in the market are feeling in real time.
Definitely a competitive nature, for sure. So many markets are saturated. And so, you might have a dispensary literally down the block from you. And if they're taking cards and you're not, you might fall short, honestly. Because, like I said, consumers want to be able to normalize their shopping experience. And everybody uses debit cards. It is what it is these days. So, though cash is always king, right? Digital payments is the way forward. So, there's less cash handling too when you go digital. So, the dispensary owner also has to pay for those armored car services, and then, the deposits in the cash, and you have to pay a percentage on your cash. So either way, you're paying a fee, right? And digital is really the way forward. I mean, you get on digital and within 60 days, your average ticket is going to be about 30 to 40% higher.
Yeah. And I like that you mentioned that, because there is in this industry, the cash deposits get taxed. So a lot of times people prefer cash, in certain industries prefer cash outside of electric because there is no fees. But like you mentioned,
You still got to pick it up. Then you still got to put it somewhere. So, I mean, it's still getting charged somewhere down the road.
Yeah, there is no such thing as no fees in cannabis to the cannabis operator. There is no such thing. But no, I like what you mentioned too of seeing, because that's something that we've seen, like the higher tickets. I haven't necessarily looked at the data from your guys' perspective, like a payment processing, but what we see from a marketing side is that there's a higher basket size when people place online orders, simply due to the fact that if you're traditional, the stereotypical, I'm in a dispensary, they don't have payment processing. I'm going to pick out what I want. Or I'm probably going to hit the ATM and I'm going to have my cash set, and I'm going to pick out what I want. And then if you're like, oh, upsell or daily special that I didn't think about when I pulled my cash out, I'm not going to go pay another $3 ATM fee on top of the one I already paid to pull out more. Whereas if you're shopping online or you're able to pay debit, you're not as fixed to this is how much I'm going to spend. And it's not about milking customers into more that they want, but it's also part of, you go to the store and you're like, oh shit, these edibles or this pre-roll's such a good deal. I can add that and it's get value, right? I'm going to buy in bulk for some sort of value, whether it is price value or intrinsic value, whatever it is, right? So you're not as set. Having that payment option definitely increases cart size. I mean, I've seen it from the marketing standpoint. It increases cart size. Do you have a figure? I don't know. We had one in our deck and I know it's outdated, and I tried to look at a new one and I saw different figures everywhere. Do you know off the top of your head what the cart increase is usually with debit versus cash?
Usually 30 to 40%.
Okay.
That's typically the average after, once the dispensary owner, starts taking debit cards, usually within about 60 days, we'll be able to see, the average ticket go up between 30 to 40%. So, and that's, versus cash.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious. I need to update. I have a little graphic I've been trying to update, but I keep seeing conflicting information everywhere, and I haven't just chose one and ran with it. So, I mean, that's obviously, like I said, that value proposition of being able to take debit card is the normalized experience.
And also, and I will point this out. I mean, ours is definitely going to be higher than just a regular digital payment, because
Sure.
The cashless ATM, where if you have a customer standing there and they don't like the idea of having to do the roundup and the change back, they might just not do it, and then they'll pay with their cash, and that's happened, right? So ours definitely has a higher ratio because it is swiping right to the penny.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, it's that trust and just regularity, right? This feels like purchasing anything else, which is important, and it obviously increases in the basket size. What do you guys, as far as MJ, obviously you guys are at MJ BizCon, we're part of this event here on Thursday. What are you guys looking for at BizCon, man? What's the main reason NaturePay is in the city of Sin?
I've never been to MJ Biz, so this is going to be my first walk on the show floor. Obviously, I'm really excited to see, the large scale, version of some of the other cannabis conferences I've been to. I want to see all the vendors, or at least the ones I've really got my eye on, maybe that I, haven't been able to get in touch with over the last 6 months, 9 months, as I've been on the phones. So I really do want to just see the people face to face and have those conversations. It kind of helps with, the fostering of the relationship throughout the year when you're able to see people face to face. So super excited to do that. And then, there's some really great cocktail parties and events that I got invited to. So I'm really looking forward to some of these events and, private invites. And then actually, I do have meetings, with people that I have fostered relationships with over the year, that now we're ready to sit down and have those face-to-face meetings and, create some moves forward. So that's great. And then, of course, we're going to be co-sponsoring the event with Hush. And those girls, I'm really excited to be part of it. They're Chicago, and I'm a Columbia College alumni as well. So there's a similar, common ground there, and super excited to be working with these gals. The event's going to be great. And so, yeah, just everything that's kind of culminating is, it's all here. So I'm super excited to be part of it. Here we go.
Weed Week is here, man. Weed Week is here. So awesome. Well, Lauren, I really appreciate you hopping on here. For people out there that want more information, the website's naturepay.net. If you are at MJ BizCon, strongly recommend coming to the Hush House after party on Thursday. Obviously, NaturePay is going to be there. We're going to be there. We're going to be doing a live podcast at the event, along with some other content coverage. Super stoked to get up out there, mingle with anyone. Anything else you want to plug real quick, Lauren, before I get you up out of here?
Well, we're going to be, kind of hosting some one-on-one meetings here at our Airbnb. So if anybody wants to, get a personal invite, you could always DM me on our NaturePay IG, or if you know me personally, you can always email me. And we'd love to host you guys over here. Hope to see you on the floor. And on behalf of our NaturePay team, we're just really excited to be here. And thank you so much for having us. Mitch, this was really great.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you guys for hopping on here. This is the North American Weed Tour podcast. We're looking at the best in legal cannabis. I'm not sure what other shows are running this week, but as far as my shows, the only show we're running the rest of the week is going to be at Hush House on Thursday live. So tune in Thursday. I'm not sure a time. It's going to be in the evening. We usually don't run episodes at 9 p.m., 10 p.m., but we're going to be doing something a little special this week. Stay tuned for more content from around the map. We are out.